and 314 for a shooting at Century Theaters. They're saying somebody's shooting in the auditorium.
Roger, keep your fires west of the smoke. You're cleared hot. An officer hit. Send me the world.
Don't go over that fence. Don't go over that fence. Grab the shotgun again.
Welcome to Tactical Tangents.
Welcome back to Tactical Tangents. This is Mike. This episode is brought to you by Drip Drop. Drip Drop Oral Rehydration Solution is an electrolyte powder that you mix with water. It was formulated by a doctor for quick absorption. I work in the desert, and it only takes a few hours in the heat, wearing body armor, carrying around a bunch of gear before I start feeling like crap and fall behind the curve in dehydration. Drip Drop keeps you in the fight so you can finish the mission and rehab for the next one. Go get you some at dripdrop.com or on Amazon, or ask your supply guy to find it for you.
And this is Jim. This episode is also brought to you by Dry Fire Mag. Ammo is getting hard to find these days, and you need to stay proficient by working your dry fire training. Dry Fire Mag solves the common and annoying problem in dry fire training of constantly having to rack the slide to reset the trigger. With this thing, all you do is clear your weapon, load the training magazine, and get to work. Check them out at dryfiremag.com.
All right, so we're going to do something a little bit different tonight. We went in our Facebook group one day a little while back, and we asked for some audience engagement, do a little Q&A session with Jim and I. Originally, I was actually going to do it while Jim was away on a work trip, but didn't get around to it. Now Jim's back, and so we can do it together, which is probably better anyway. The contest was essentially to give away a free T-shirt and try to get some engagement. And so whichever one of these questions generates the answer that we like the best, we'll have to figure that out at the end, and we'll give someone a free T-shirt. So if you're not in our podcast discussion group, go get up in there. And you can always send us questions and stuff. We could do more of this if we get them. We just, we don't hear a lot from you guys, and we'd love to. So shoot us an email or find us on social media, and we'll try to incorporate what we can. So we've got a good list of questions. We're not going to probably get to all of them. It depends on how much banter Jim and I do in response to any given one. Some of them we might hit just really quick, either because there's other episodes that touch on some of it, or other episodes coming that might touch on some of it. And, we might spend some more time on others. So we'll just kind of see how it goes. So, yeah. Jim, anything before we get going here?
No, I'm excited. I like opportunities to interact with our audience, and I was impressed at how thoughtful the questions were, and I'm going to try and do them justice. So
right,
we'll go from there.
All right. So the first one is from Chris, and he asks, what has been a moment in your career that either made you question why you're in this line of work or confirmed your decision of being in this line of work?
Yeah, I can think of a couple of examples that both solidified my decisions about the military one way or the other. The first one that really strikes me is 9/11, right? September 11, 2001, I was at mandatory golf class at the Air Force Academy, because of course that's what the Air Force wanted me doing
obviously,
that day.
Right? Because you were in the Air Force, so
obviously. and that in itself, I think, is kind of tells you how my experience in the military has been, right? One, I was so excited to get to be a part of how we as a country were going to handle, the terrorist attacks. And two, I was so angry, one, at the attacks, but also that's what the military thought I should be doing that day, was golfing. And that's, if you've caught anything from this podcast, it's like, I'm a true believer that we need to go find bad guys and do something about them, right? And golfing is not how we get there. That's one of the reasons I do this podcast, is I'm trying to explain that to people, right? So that's the first one that really hits me. I have had a couple of individual days over the course of my career where I had really negative interactions with a couple of really bad bosses. And those were tough days. Those were days where I had to sit there and really question, like, why am I doing this? Why am I putting myself through this? I could be, going to law school, or flying for the airlines, or selling oranges by the side of the freeway or something. What was the name of that truck driving school? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And despite those days, I've stayed in, and some of my time, not always glamorous, not always super career fulfilling, But I've enjoyed my time, and I've enjoyed the people I've been with, and working through those rough days got me to the days I got to protect ground parties in combat. And when I think about days, it's solidified why I do what I do. Being able to be the cavalry when someone is having the worst day of their life, that's everything for me.
Yeah.
Right.
Gold. And I have similar sorts of experiences. I mean, obviously it's a different context, but on any given day that you're getting spit on, or you're dealing with some guy that shits or pisses himself in the back of your car or anything like that.
That was Vegas, and we weren't going to talk about that,
Right.
Mike.
Right. But speaking of being in law enforcement, when you're dealing with anything like that, it's obviously like, why the hell am I doing this again? Like when you're searching the guy you had to arrest that's like a transient and you have to take his socks off to look for dope between his toes, like that gets... Now, fortunately, I got out
of... girl?
Yeah. Fortunately, I got out of a patrol assignment, so I don't have to deal with most of that anymore. And that's one of the main reasons. But those are definitely days that you question things. And it's not just that. I mean, it's, post George Floyd obviously was a challenging time. Just to be a cop and to deal with that stuff. Post Ferguson, same thing. I mean, there's always been ups and downs, but I will say that the ups, the flip side of the coin is it only takes one, right? Like you have one event where you can legitimately say that you save somebody's life or put a really bad guy away or anything along those lines. And suddenly all the troubles disappear, right? Like it, and to Jim's point about being the cavalry, I mean, there was a hostage situation that we went to one time. This guy had, I think he was 7 or 9 years old, was holding him hostage in his bedroom with a knife. The bedroom door was barricaded, and we were sitting there all night trying to negotiate with this guy. Our team was able to make a covert entry into the house to get cameras in there and basically take the entire house away except for the room that they were in. And I was outside because the bedroom door was barricaded. We had explosive charges on the walls from the kitchen going into the bedroom. We had a plan to go through the bedroom window, which is where I was. I was crouched down underneath the window waiting for an opportunity to go. And it was kind of an interesting, I guess, juxtaposition that I was in, because one of my distinct memories from that call, and it was like a wintertime call. It was super cold out. We were there all night. I mean, it was one of those things that no one was going to rush this, right? And there was a neighbor had a radio on their patio, and that Lady Gaga song from A Star Is Born, Shallow, Sha-la-la-la-lo, that one.
How does it go, Mike?
Sha-la-la-la-lo. Yeah, I'm obviously a singer. Like that was playing at one point, and it was just like this weird, like, this seems really calm and peaceful, but we're contemplating like extreme violence if we get the opportunity to go into this bedroom, right? And it's just weird. It's one of those things that just gives you meaning, And we had to actually swap out. We were on that call long enough that we set up a rotation with our regional team. And of course, right at the end of their window that they had before we took back over, they got an opportunity to effect the rescue and do the breach and all that. And it was awesome. They did a great job. But you go to calls like that and you realize that, like, hey, like in that case, I was number 3 in the stack. So the first 2 guys were going to be the shooters that go to the dad, and my job was to grab the kid. And like, when you're going to be that guy, that you find meaning in that, right? And so there's been a lot of incidents like that over the years where, it only takes one of those, and that will recharge you in a lot of ways. And those always will overshadow the bad stuff, right? And I just think it's one of those things that if you're intentional about why you get into the work and you always kind of ground yourself in that, you'll find purpose and you'll be all right. So there's that. Tracy asks, what kind of tactics and training do you think would benefit non-commissioned staff working in the field, especially when they drive marked police cars and get very little DT or defensive tactics in the academy, and that's it? So this is actually a person that works at my agency, and we have community service officers who go to non-emergency calls and they take reports and they do traffic collision stuff. And so they're not doing quote unquote law enforcement duties, but they're still driving police cars. And so they could easily be targeted for that sort of thing. So I think it's a relevant question, and it's something, what I like about the question is it actually opens up a different conversation, maybe not the one that she's expecting in terms of preparing for the self-defense type of thing. And it has to do with things like risk management, right? And it's about, what's the saying, Jim? Using your superior piloting skills and judgment to avoid the problems that would require something like that.
Yeah. So I use my superior judgment to keep myself out of situations that would require my superior ninja flying skills, right? So, yeah. So I'm the resident, not a cop, but I would say based on what I see in that question, you are not looking for fights, right? As a non-commissioned community service type, you are going to the calls that it's assumed there's not going to be a fight. That's the problem, though. There's a lot of assumptions there.
Right.
And you're not a sworn cop, but will the bad guy know you're not a sworn cop, and will he or she care? And the answer is, maybe not. Who knows? Yeah. You don't know, right? You're rolling dice. Mike is going to have a much more thought out answer, but just real quick, one of the things that I would offer to anyone is go find the ShivWorks ECQC program. We've done a couple episodes about it. If you are into jiu-jitsu, if you're into self-defense, if you're into integrating weapons and talking and dealing with those ambiguous situations that are kind of hard to tell which way it's going to go, I think that's one of the best courses anyone can take, whether you are law enforcement, civilian, military, anything. They're not paying us to say that. I think it's a good program. I think it's worth checking out.
Absolutely. And like Jim said, we've covered that one at length, that program. And there's a whole segment in there, Managing Unknown Contacts, that kind of deals with this. But the idea being having that risk management that hopefully prevents you from getting into bad situations. And the key in that, I really hate the phrase or the expression situational awareness. So I'm not going to go that direction, but I want to preface with that kind of idea, right? What I think of when it comes to situational awareness is the difference between being active and passive. So if you're looking at going to an incident, or let's say just regular citizen self-defense, you're going to the grocery store. It's 10 o'clock at night. You're out of milk and your baby needs milk. And so you have to go to the store late at night by yourself, and you're going to be going through a parking lot. You're going to have an armful of kid carrier or whatever. And so now you have some risk to manage potentially, right? Depending on the part of town you live in and things like that. Rather than just showing up and passively loading your arms full of stuff and walking from your car to the store, be more active than that. Look around, take a deliberate opportunity to take a lap around the parking lot, look for shady individuals, select where you're going to park. Don't just take the first available spot, right? Make a decision based on what is going to be advantageous for you. And the same thing goes with a situation like yours, Tracy. If you're going to non-emergency calls, like read those calls carefully and make sure that you're looking at, was there a question not asked that needs to be answered before I show up to this? Because a lot of times the people entering those calls are going to get it wrong, right? So be active in problem solving and making deliberate choices. Don't just, like Jim said, make the assumption and just passively go showing up to stuff nonchalant. So there's
a movie called The Pentagon Wars. It's about how the Army bought a armored personnel carrier, the Bradley fighting vehicle. And over the course of the development of this fighting vehicle, it got bigger and heavier and got a big gun on it. And the Army guys start saying, it's starting to look a lot like a tank. We know it's not a tank, but will the enemy know it's not a tank? And the engineer's like, do you want us to put a sign in 50 languages saying, I'm a troop carrier, not a tank, please don't shoot me? It's like, it doesn't work that way, right? And so I think the recognition that you are a potential target, that by itself is good.
Yeah.
Right? That by itself is what's going to set you up to consider your risk differently because you're exposed to more risk, right? So the recognition of your risk exposure, I think, is good. So good on you.
Absolutely. Eric asks, in your opinion and experience, how do you define the actions that make up leadership? More specifically, how do you practice leadership in an environment where people are unmotivated and do not want to be led? Well,
if you figured that out, it's worth about $1 billion.
Let us know. No, but this is the leadership challenge, right?
Yeah.
People are unmotivated and don't want to lead. Well, guess what? Guess whose job it is to figure that out and to motivate them, to dangle some carrot, to make them want to do the things, right? When Jim and I did this cadet program thing back in the day, we had to memorize a definition of leadership. And it was the art of influencing and directing people in a way that will win their obedience, confidence, respect, and loyal cooperation in achieving a common objective.
Nicely done.
Yeah, like that. I remember that from when I was like 14 or whatever, when I had to learn that. So the art of influencing and directing people in a way that will win their obedience, respect, and cooperation towards a common objective. So identify what the common objectives are, because there might be the objectives of the organization that does not necessarily represent the individual goals or objectives of each member of the organization. So you need to find some congruence and some common ground between all the people in that team, in that organization, that binds them together, right? And then you need to do what you can to serve that purpose and sort of provide for it, if that makes sense. So that is probably the biggest way I would answer that question. Jim, what do you got?
It starts with, and it sounds trite, but it's a big deal, is you got to know your people, right? Know your mission, know your people. So just like Mike said, what are we really trying to get done here? And maybe I don't have to lead them too hard, depending on what it is we're trying to get done. But if it's a big, complicated task, or it takes a lot of work or a lot of risk on their part, maybe you do need to push a lot of motivation in. Knowing your people will tell you what motivates every individual person. And it's not always the same, right? The things that motivate me are not the exact same as what motivates Mike, versus what motivates, someone who just took a shift at McDonald's, right? Those people are motivated differently from me. And so one of the things I'm big on is the concept of dynamic leadership, which is you change your style based on who you're dealing with and what you're trying to get done and how much experience they have and how much training they have. And you go from there. So where are they on Maslow's hierarchy? What is it that they're seeking next? Are they seeking safety? Are they seeking more money? Are they seeking recognition for their work? Do they want to be higher in the hierarchy? You can use those things once you learn your people to influence them. It might sound trite, but a lot of these things are trite because they're true. You got to lead by example. So if you're expecting these people to get on board, you need to be on board. You need to be doing the work. You need to show them what right looks like. You need to show them what work ethic looks like, and know what your levers of influence are. Can I fire some people? Can I hire new people? Maybe you can, maybe you can't. Depends on where you work. Can I offer bonuses? Can I offer rewards? Can I offer punishments? Be real careful about how you offer punishments, because they're not nearly as effective as people tend to think. Right. So I would probably start there without knowing the details of your specific situation. I would start with there. Know your people really well. Get to know them. Get to know the task and the mission, what it is you're trying to get done. Lead by example. Consider what levers you've got. Those are the first things that come to mind.
Yeah, the Maslow's hierarchy thing, we did a whole episode on that. I'd say refer back to that. I think that's a good key in trying to figure out how to motivate people. There's also, we've talked about it before, there's a model called the situational leadership model, and it's a starting point, but like Jim says, you tailor your approach based on the individual, and that model talks about their level of motivation and their level of competence for any given task and how you approach them, whether you should coach them, whether you should delegate to them, whether you should direct them, or whether you should sell it to them, right? And sort of empower them to be involved. And that's a good way of approaching certain things. The other thing that I think is worth emphasizing in terms of, and we did an episode, Leadership Volume 2 was like, I think we called it like your shitty attitude is contagious, something like that. Mm-hmm. And it's remembering that like you have a sphere of influence. So like Jim was talking about knowing what your limitations are, your left and right limits. What is it to be a company man? I don't think that anyone wants to go around and just say that like the organization is king. But again, going back to that common objective, if we all have a purpose that binds us together, then there's no reason that we can't sort of put that first. And you just need to remember that you have your own sphere of influence. You can influence the people around you or the people you're responsible for to whatever degree you can, and try to encourage that among other people and have that more positive outlook. I think that goes a long way in terms of what Jim said, leading by example.
Yeah, and universally, people would rather be asked than told. So always start by asking, would you please do this? Yeah. And then tell them, hey, bud, I need you to show up to work on time. That's just how we do business here, right? So start by asking. When I think about my own career, my own personal experience with this stuff, I have been in the military for right around 20 years now. And in that time, I have given 2 orders where I said, no, we're in the military. You are going to do this, right? And in that time, I have given formal written paperwork, reprimand stuff to people twice, not related, interestingly. So the frequency with which I have to do stuff like that is actually really rare as a military officer, right? Different guys in different assignments and different gals in different assignments might have to do that a lot more depending on how many people they're leading and what type of tasks they're running. But in my community, one of the things I'm really, really lucky about is I have incredibly talented, incredibly motivated people who I work with. It makes my job a lot easier, makes me look good, whatever. But if you're leaning on the hard levers, the demotions, promotions, all that stuff all the time, if you're abusing those levers, you're probably not leading real well, right? Start with the personal charisma stuff, right? Be friendly, be competent, be confident, be assertive and not aggressive. This needs to get done. I need you to do this. This is your deadline. And make it very, very, very clear. It's one of the biggest things you can do as a leader is make the expectation and the mission really clear. And most people in the world will try to help you as long as they know what the hell it is you want. So I would offer that too.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot in there. I think we handled that one.
We got it. Yeah.
Rooster.
Boom. Now you're a leader.
Yeah.
Boom.
Rooster asks, what determines
That's
a successful...
not a real name.
What?
That's not a real name. Rooster.
He asks, what determines a successful canine program? Is it stats on located narcotics, property, apprehensions, if you have apprehension dogs, located persons, community engagement, money or assets gained? It's all pretty subjective on, based on the administration, and I'm curious what your response would be. So,
number of bites, number of excessive force complaints.
We want to avoid that, obviously.
Lawsuits.
So I think it really comes down to the needs of the organization in a big sense. If you're on a drug task force, then a detection dog goes a long way. In my case, we have narcotics detection dogs as a certification. We use it a little bit, but our bread and butter is finding people that run from the cops and using the dogs as a deterrent, preventing people from running or hiding or fighting. And finding people is obviously a big part of that. But again, it goes to the needs of whatever the organization is. And I think more philosophically, in terms of recognizing what the dog brings to the table, it has a lot to do with being a force multiplier. What do I get by having a dog, right? There's that saying, the strength of the wolf is the pack and the strength of the pack is the wolf, right?
Sheepdog. Ow.
Yeah, let's not. But the dog by itself is just a dog, and the handler by himself is just another guy, right? So you put the two together, and what does it get you? I can search an area for a person who's hiding from the police much more efficiently that way, right? It's a force multiplier. It saves me time in that sense. And I use the dog's sense of smell and his drive and his instincts to give me an early warning. So when I think about my dog, which as an apprehension dog handler, the two things that my dog provides for me is a locating tool and an early warning system. I can find somebody that I would have a difficult time finding, or at least I can find them from farther away or more faster, more efficiently. And there are going to be changes in the dog's behavior that tell me that I'm getting close, which is huge if the guy is potentially there to ambush me, right? So, or ambush other officers. So anytime my dog gets used in that kind of capacity, philosophically, again, that force multiplier role, that synergy, that's what I'm after. Anytime I've sent my dog in a direction of a guy where the dog becomes the target and not me or one of my buddies is a win. So give you the example, we had a guy that shot at the police earlier this year. This was my dog that just retired. His last deployment was a guy that shot at the police during a pursuit. And we went and tracked him down hours later. Surveillance found him, and we went to go do an arrest on him. And he pulled a gun as we were doing the jump to arrest him. And sending the dog on him meant that he would point the gun at the dog and not at one of us, right? Because you see this dog coming at you, of course, you want to deal with that. So the guy, it totally got in his head. He froze up. The dog got him, and the dog literally saved the suspect's life, if no one else. But if he had gone shooting, he probably would have diverted his attention to the dog instead of us, which is a win. So those are some of the things that I think about in terms of what the dog brings to the table.
So there is an undertone in this question about justifying a program, right? Justifying the funds that go into a canine program. And there's a saying in bureaucracies that I love called spread sheets or spread cheeks. As in, you have to quantify the value of any budget line item. Right? You have to say, we accomplished this. We found so many kilos of coke. We arrested so many bad guys. In the military, it's, so many enemy killed in action. And we count all kinds of things in EKI, goats and pigs and water buffalo, whatever, right? The problem with this is exactly kind of what Mike just described, which is there's a lot more qualitative value in having the dog, right? And that's where the challenge is on you to explain things. That requires written communication, which I know is very hard for some of my law enforcement friends. Take a picture. A picture is worth $1 million. Let me say that again. A picture is worth $1 million. Take a picture of the scene. Take a picture of the guy. Okay? And then explain in like a situation report format, a sit rep, kind of a 5 W's. Who, what, where, when, why. And say, this is the scenario we saw tonight. This is the value the dog offered. What it did was it saved the perp's life. That is one OIS we didn't have because we had the dog. Or we think it saved the officer's life. And this is one officer down we didn't have because of the dog. And tell the story and push that up the chain, right? Send that to the leader of the canine organization. Send that to whatever the ops leader is above that. Send that to the chief. I don't speak, your agency. But those are important stories to tell. Those are stories that those executives within your agency can take to the funding sources, right? They can take that to the city council, the state legislature, the county, and they can say, hey, we need to keep this line item in the budget funded. Yeah, that's a $10,000 dog, but what it's saving us is millions of dollars of lawsuits. Let's keep it, right? But it starts with you telling the story or quantify it.
Yeah.
If you can't quantify it, tell the story.
I'm glad Jim hit on this because I meant to hit on the stats thing and I got distracted by the philosophical stuff. But stats matter, right? Numbers matter. The key is what numbers. And so at any given point, right, a stat of 1 might tell that story of this one time that this one thing happened. I mean, the thing is those stories are never going to be isolated. I mean, I could tell you a bunch of times where a dog saved a suspect's life. You have to tell that story every time because in recent memory, right? Or when you're staring down the lawsuit, it's easy to not remember those things back in the day that happened that were good. So,
and by the way, this is true for all special teams. This is not just canine, right? Every couple of years, every agency does a thing, as far as I could tell, of, we're going to get rid of all the special teams. Everyone's going to be a patrolman from now on, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like the movie Office Space. What is it exactly you say you do here?
What do you need a SWAT team for exactly?
Yeah.
Why do you need a helicopter? Helicopters are expensive, but let me tell you what's really expensive. Not having one when you need one.
Yeah,
right?
No doubt. So, so stats matter. It's just what story do the stats tell, right? This is Mike, and I just want to jump in real quick to announce our new partnership with Brink Drones. Brink has created life-saving capabilities in a drone that can break windows, fly into houses and confined spaces, and even crash into things and stay in the air with advanced pilot assistance that does not use GPS. Brink drones are built in the USA. It has night vision and IR that can function in blacked out and zero light conditions. It can flip itself back over, and it is a flying cell phone with two-way communication and a live video feed. It can even carry and drop off items for hostage negotiators with the payload feature. Brink has a really cool and compelling heritage that came to be after the 1 October mass shooting at Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas, and they are committed in their mission to leverage technology to save lives. And I can tell you firsthand that their drones will do just that by flying into places that are too dangerous to risk human lives. If you work in public safety, your agency needs to see what this drone can do. Go check out Brink Drones at brinkdrones.com or feel free to reach out to us, and we'd be happy to tell you all about them. Again, that's Brink, BRINC, drones.com. Another canine-related question. Vince asks, and by the way, if you guys don't know, Vince is our behind the scenes background media manager guy, and the show wouldn't be alive without for him. So shout out to Vince.
We've had him on the show before. He did a great episode with us about pre-combat checks, which was
and
awesome.
Inspections. Yep. Compared to training your first dog with little or no canine experience, how different or difficult has training a second dog been now that you have some experience? So I'm working my third patrol dog, and he is still pretty new. He's only got, I mentioned that my other dog retired last March, so he's 6-7 months, something like that. Math is hard. I don't know. Since we certified him anyway. So certainly the handling experience goes a long way in problem solving and knowing what kind of things are going to come up. It speeds up the process when you recognize a problem and you have an idea how to fix it, right? The problem, it's not really a problem. It's just what you have to understand about this is that every dog is different and they all have their own challenges. You know, the things that I dealt with my first dog, Bane, were night and day different when I got my second dog, Blitz. And the things that the challenge, some of the challenges I had with Blitz, completely different than than the ones I have with Chase, my new dog. So you just have to understand going into it that you can have all the experience in the world, problem solving still comes up. That's the big one. As far as how different it is, we have a saying that every time you solve one problem, you create another one. So one of the differences, or I guess difficulties, is at the point that I retired Blitz, my last dog, I had him in service for over 7 years. And at the end there, he was push button. I could fire and forget that missile. You know, I mean, I didn't have to. That last deployment I told you about, the guy with the gun, I sent him from the back of a van, sight unseen. I just threw him out the door. and he went right past the SWAT guys, right to the suspect. I mean, it was fire and I didn't have to do anything, right? We have the other saying that we have is usually by the time you realize your dog is that squared away, they got about 6 months left. and then you're done, right? Because you spend all this time getting them up to speed and experienced and seasoned and trained, and then it's like they're in their prime, but then it's time to retire. So it's the difficulty has been, well, my new dog, I have to reteach all this stuff that took me years to do with my last dog. So it'll go a little faster, but it's different. Rory asks, how do I teach people to maintain a command presence? For me, it comes natural. More on that in a minute. I'm a more dominant alpha type person. How do I teach it to someone who's not like me? I'm a police explorer and drill team commander, and our biggest issue is people not being able to command or take control of a scene. All right, so there's a lot to unpack in this. That it comes natural for you is something that we're gonna hit on in an upcoming episode. And we've hit on probably in some other episodes, nature versus nurture. There are probably some reasons that you feel like it's become a little bit more natural to you, and at least compared to others, right? The other thing is whatever the heck a command presence is. This is one of those like academy terms that like gets thrown around to young police recruits. Like, you need to have command presence and show up on a scene and have command, take control of the scene. And it lacks nuance.
Yeah. So the funny thing, I distinctly remember being a cadet, and Mike remembers me being a cadet, a military cadet, and getting this really wrong. First off, my natural impression of command presence when I was a kid came from movies. It came from watching Full Metal Jacket and drill sergeants in movies. And I thought that's what command presence meant, was like the knife hand and the rigid posture. And, the kind of cartoonish military robotic, sir, ma'am, I need you to step aside out of the vehicle. And like that silly BS. And that's not really command presence. Command presence, in my view, is being assertive, which is different from aggressive and calm, different from dominant. Yeah. And calm, right? You are entering a scene, whatever it is, whether it's a staff meeting or a mass shooting, you're entering a scene that already has plenty of energy, has plenty of feelings. You need to be in control of yourself before you walk into that scene. That's step one. You don't get to command shit until you command yourself. Start there. And that doesn't mean rigid posture. Stand up straight, stand up like you're at work, like you would expect anyone to, but you don't have to march around and do the little like Hitler, marching with your boots or whatever thing, right? So that's thing one. As far as how you develop assertiveness in others, and I think assertiveness is really the best word to use here. Words mean things. I want assertive in basically everyone I work with, right? And that's a core skill, even flying an airplane. I need everyone on my airplane to be able to speak up. If we're on fire, I don't want them to timidly sit there and be like, well, we're on fire, but I don't want to tell the pilot. That would be scary. Like, I don't want that. I want you to speak up, right? How do I develop that? One, especially in cadet or explorer or academy type environments, is I need you to get up in front of the class and talk. That was one of the best things we did, that Mike and I did growing up, was I would make Mike get up in front of a classroom and teach us how to like shine shoes, or teach us how to, what the definition of leadership is, and teach the class what the definition of leadership is. When I was 15-year-old Jim and he was 14-year-old Mike or whatever it was, that was a thing we did. And having to get up in front of a class and command the room was over and over and over and over, made it way less scary to get up in front of people, for one. And two, we started to learn the skills of like how to run a room and how to do how to do it without that, like how to do it without thinking about it, right? Developing automaticity for, or what you might call natural skills for commanding a group, right? So I would start with that, but I would de-emphasize the phrase command presence, and I would emphasize assertiveness when the situation calls for it, right? You want to be in control, but not controlling, and it starts with you.
Yeah.
Guys who are obsessive about, I have to be in control of this situation, are very easy to manipulate. And that is not what you want to be as a cop. That is not what you want to be as a military leader. That is not what you want to be as a concealed carrier. So consider that.
Yeah, those are all great points. And I think I just want to reemphasize that command presence is one of those nickel terms that someone came up with that became just, I mean, it spread like wildfire in law enforcement. And I get it, but we need to get past that, right? It doesn't have the nuance that we need. And that's going back to what Jim said about assertive. That is what we need. And the other thing is being dynamic. Like, situations require different things. And
read the room.
Right.
Read the room. Read the room. Right.
Yeah. So understanding that, you know, in some situations you need to go in there maybe and be a little bit more forceful in your words, right? A little bit more commanding, if you want to say that. But in some situations, what you need to do is talk softer and slower. And recognizing the difference is half the battle. So get past that phrase is step one. And two, in terms of training others and talking about things like taking command or control of a scene, understand that there are subtasks to those ideas, right? Like, so Jim gave some examples of, well, maybe we start with just getting them up in front of a group of people. And so you can give them enough that they can handle it, but it's outside of their comfort zone a little bit. And that will build the component skills that lead to, how do I manage a major scene? Like, managing a major scene is something that in real life, right? Not just Explorers where we do it kind of as an educational thing. In real life, like, there are scenes that I might be in charge of when I first show up, but it's going to be taken over by someone with a higher pay grade than me, and for a lot of good reasons, right?
Thank God.
yeah. No one wants me in charge of that stuff. But the idea is, I mean, you can spend a career learning all of that stuff. So you have to start small. Give them what they can handle. Give them tasks and scenes that are manageable. Make sure that they get meaningful coaching and feedback. Provide them with the tools and the component skills necessary to be successful. And repetition. Repetition's the mother of learning. They got to keep doing it. And if, for example, it comes natural to you or to other people in the room and they always insert themselves and take over, guess what your people aren't doing? Learning, right? Because you're doing it for them. So you have to figure out how to empower those people and give them an opportunity to make mistakes and learn and grow.
Mike and I were running, we'll call it a leadership reaction course, like a big problem solving course once. And we had two very intelligent, very assertive women, cadets, young ladies, who were very good at what they did and kind of natural leaders, and they tended to just kind of take charge. They were also higher ranking in the cadet structure, so they tended to be in charge. And one of them we've had on the show. We had MJ the Marine on the show. That's where she ended up. And I noticed that they were kind of a center of gravity of the group. And so I pulled them both aside during the leadership reaction course, and they had to sing "I'm a Little Teapot" the whole time. Well, the rest of the team had to establish a new leader and solve the problem. And just as an example of give those people opportunities to lead.
Yep.
Right. Give the quiet ones opportunities to lead. Today, quiet kid number one is in charge. Quiet kid number one, get to the front of class. You're in charge today. What are we doing? Right. And you don't have to pop quiz them with that. You can give them a little lead up, but give them distinct opportunities to take charge. I think that will help them.
And I want to caveat that with, your goal is not to embarrass them. It's not to put them on the spot and
Yeah.
call them out or let everyone see them stumble. It's something that you should have done something to help them prepare for, right?
Agreed.
You're giving them enough that it's something that they can handle. It might be a little out of their comfort zone, but that they're able to handle it, and you know that, and that you're going to create and foster an encouraging environment, not one that's going to shut them down or make them feel shitty, right? That's not cool. So don't be that guy. All right, Pete asks, what are the best on and off range shooting drills, and what should an average CCW holder focus on during dry fire? As far as shooting drills go, you could go for days, right? I think a big one for concealed carry is draw to first shot. We talked with John Correa a lot about that. He's been on the show before, and he's obviously got his YouTube channel, Active Self Protection. He's hit on that. I don't need to deep dive why draw to first shot's a big deal for CCW. He's done a better job of it than we can. But draw to first shot for concealed carry, I think, is pretty big. And you could do that with the Mantis in dry fire and in live fire. I think that's a great way to go. Dry fire in general is huge, just building that repetition and doing it all the time. Dry fire mag is another great tool for that. And other drills, I don't know. I feel like we could probably do a whole other episode on shooting drills. There was one that we did with John Johnston. He talked about his tests and standards course. You can look into something like that, but you can quantify shooting drills in a lot of ways. I think the key is have a benchmark, a way of measuring your progress, and do something that's going to advance your baseline is key.
Yeah. For live fire, absolutely practice drawing from however you normally in real life conceal, right? Draw to fire.
And with what you're going to carry, by the way. I was recently talking to someone, and I'm not going to dime anybody out here, but I was recently talking to someone about shooting, and they were like, I'm going to buy, I don't remember what it was. We'll say for argument's sake, a Glock 43 to carry, but then a Glock 17 for the range. And I'm like, don't do that. If you're shoot the gun that you're going to carry, right? There's a difference for a reason. So that's another key.
Totally agree. Train like you fight, or train into whatever scenario you think you're going to have to fight in. If you're getting ready for zombies, goddamn train for zombies, right? If I am doing a range session and I've got all the time in the world and I'm doing whatever I want, I like to do a warm up. So, single shots. So draw to single shot, and I'm trying to get as small as I can. That's mostly just like a warm up. It's to get my hands warm, right? Get my eyeballs working. Google dot torture.
I was going to mention that, but you were talking. Yeah. You beat me to it.
I think that's a good one to check out. Just Google dot torture. What should an average CCW holder focus on during dry fire? Making sure the gun is empty. That is the number one thing I want you to focus on. Is make sure dry fire is actually dry fire. Beyond that, I have noticed I get bored and start just fucking around. Like I just start clicking it. I start clicking the gun at my light switch. Don't do that. Like
be intentional.
Make a point. Be intentional and deliberate and thoughtful with it. Do a drill. It doesn't really matter what it is. Yeah. Mantis X, and this is a legit plug, Mantis X will put you through drills. Do the drills. Yeah. It will also give you feedback on it. So I think start there. If you don't know what else to do that. The last thing that I push on this is practice talking while you're doing all of it.
Or at least tie it in somehow.
Yeah. Consider that if you're shooting in a defensive scenario, you're probably in a situation where you're already interacting with someone, right? So that might be they grab you at a gas station, or they shove you in between two cars in the parking lot, or they come up and start hustling you for money, or they've lost their dog or whatever, right? So start your shooting scenarios with there's going to be some kind of interaction precursor to it. And you may be off balance. You might be shoved. I'm not saying someone should shove you at the range. I'm not big on that, but consider that you might be coming from a disadvantage when you're shooting.
A couple things I'll throw at Jim mentioned dot torture. I definitely think that's big. I also think there's a drill called the 50-50 drill, which is decent, where you load around into the chamber, remove the magazine, and then you fire 2 shots. So you're going to get a bullet and then a click. And it's a good one to deal with a little bit of anticipation. There's, it's going to take me a second to explain, but if you have someone that can help you shoot with like a timer, and you practice resetting your trigger properly, which is during recoil, you can have someone use the timer to tell you when to fire your round. And the idea is you prep your trigger, or you pull the trigger as soon as the beep happens, and the amount of time between the beeps that they give you gets shorter and shorter. The goal is to encourage you to have that trigger reset and prepped and ready to fire your second round on command, right? So that you're not pinning the trigger to the rear and holding it and then waiting to reset it after the fact. So that would probably be something that would be easier to show you in like a video. Maybe I'll put something like that together, but I think that's a very valuable drill. And notably, a couple things I would de-emphasize for most civilian concealed carry. Now, this is different if you're concealed carry in a setting like law enforcement, plainclothes work, or something overseas, different thing. But civilian self-defense concealed carry, I would de-emphasize reloads. I wouldn't spend a lot of time on that. I'm not saying you can't ever do them, but they're better things to work on. And speaking of that, I would say that don't get too wrapped up in just being able to shoot. Also think about your ability to, like Jim said, talk, communicate, read a situation, and potentially fight, right, as well. And physical fitness. Being able to run away, I think, is worth, when practical. So
yeah, absolutely.
Quick one we're going to hit here. Pete also asks, how can you train yourself to be more disciplined? Well, that's the thing about discipline is you just have to do it, right? Willpower, Nike, just do it. That is the key. And making that a habit of not giving yourself excuses and just saying, like, I'm going to do this thing because this is... Insert your reason or motivation here, but you can't expect your motivation to carry you. At some point, you just have to make the decision, the choice. Life is about choices. Like, do you want to sleep in or do you want to get up? Your alarm goes off. You make a choice, right? You want to be disciplined? Get your ass out of bed. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, I agree. I suck at discipline. It's the single biggest thing I personally feel like I need to work on. It's the little choices all day long, from the time your alarm goes off to the time you go to bed, down to when you go to bed, right? Learning how to tell yourself no. And we're in a society that hates that. But guess what? If you want to do something great, you have to be able to tell yourself no. No, I don't need to eat that cheeseburger. No, I don't need to eat that Cinnabon. No, I don't need to watch that TV show. What I need to do is hit the track or hit the gym or hit the range. And that is hard. That's the point. If it were easy, it would be called your mom, right? But it's sometimes you get to do the hard stuff.
Yeah, so to speak. So two things we're going to hit just real quick is there's a question in here about an evolution in recruiting strategies and methods. That's coming from Benjamin. He talks about identifying different recruits and targeting different recruits. Tomorrow we're recording an episode that's going to probably hit on that pretty well. And as a follow-up, Rory also asks, as someone preparing for law enforcement, what kind of training should I get to stand out in the application process? What I will say in both of those things is that law enforcement as a whole, as an industry, is struggling to find qualified people, period. So if you have a blood pressure and a clean background, you can probably get hired just fine.
And both of those are negotiable.
Yeah.
But what I will say, and Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, is some agencies are way more competitive than others, right? Some of them offer a lot more competitive pay, or they're in better places to live or worse places to live or whatever. And so if you want to be very competitive, do a little research up front, talk to people who are in that agency already, learn from them, and get the basic stuff down solid, right? So if you get an interview time, show up on time, show up wearing what they tell you to wear, get a haircut, and just basic, like, how do you present yourself for any job interview? I think will go a long way toward helping you get hired.
Yep, I agree. And the last one that we're going to hit for tonight, Chris asks, what is your greatest strength and your greatest weakness, and what do you do to maintain the good and improve the bad? Speaking of interview questions, this is one you should always be prepared for. And if you are interviewing, the advice that I would offer is always be able to spin the negative in a positive way, right? Your weakness or your challenge or your limitations in a positive way. Try to vector that back into something worthwhile. I'm not going to do that for the purposes of this question. I'm just going to give it to you real. My biggest strength, I think, is that I am pretty introspective. I tend to reflect a lot on what my strengths and limitations are and do something meaningful with that. And I think that carries me through a lot of decisions that I've had to make and a lot of choices in terms of discipline. We talked about the discipline thing, right? A lot of that. So being introspective and being able to reflect and think, intentionally about the kind of person you want to become, I think has been one of my biggest strengths. Biggest weakness is I talk too much. I don't have a good filter. I talk enough that I started a podcast. So here we are. And often there are things that just because I think them, I could probably just not speak them in a lot of cases. And so that's gotten me in trouble a number of times. And there's been plenty of occasions where I'm like, I should have just kept my mouth shut. And so I'm still working on that. Jim?
Oh gosh. Well, I'm a pilot, so obviously I don't have any weaknesses. Strengths. I think I have a incredibly high give a shit factor, right? There's my emotional attachment to the mission is very, very high, and we're going to win. I'm going to make sure that we win, whatever the task is, mission is. I think I am a above average communicator. I think I'm a pretty good writer. At this point, people pay me for my writing, so that's probably a good sign that I can write decently. And so I can help a boss communicate whatever it is they're trying to communicate to whatever audience they're trying to communicate to, whether that's senior leaders or the rest of the staff. I can help them get their message out in a way that will have impact. As far as my weaknesses, I do struggle with self-discipline. Like I have to fight to tell myself no. I have to fight to stay on a process. We've talked about that all throughout this podcast, right? Or the podcast episodes over the time has been like, staying on a diet is a pain in my ass. I do not like to do it. I will go real hard, and then I will get impatient with it, and I will bounce out of it. And kind of to tie this into the previous question is self-awareness is huge. If I ask you what your strengths and weaknesses are, and you just like give me a blank stare, or you're too scared to answer because, oh my God, they might find out I have a weakness, that tells me a lot about you. So you got to know something about what you're good at, what you're bad at. Also, I suck at math. Oh my God, I suck at math. That's all I got.
Yeah, math sucks. I mean, I was decent at math like back in the day in school when I gave a shit.
Yeah.
But I learned a lot of stuff that I had no otherwise purpose for in life. So I think we hit a lot of cool stuff here. I got to figure out who we're going to give a t-shirt to here, Jim.
We give a couple out. If we got a couple people with the right sizing for the t-shirts we got.
That's the key. Is I've limited supply of t-shirts, so we'll have to make sure.
And if nothing else, we'll get you a sticker or something like that, or a mug.
Yeah, for sure. So we're gonna probably think on this. We'll do some edits and listen to it again and see which one we like the best. But we appreciate the input and the questions. I think it's a good conversation, and we filled an entire hour talking about this stuff. So legit.
Yeah, we like the interaction. Don't forget, you can hit us up directly. You can shoot an email to jim@tacticaltangents.com if you want to talk about airplane stuff, or mike@tacticaltangents.com if you want to talk about canine stuff and growing salt and pepper hair, whatever it is you need to do. Like, we can handle offline questions too. Or if you have a good enough question, like we love doing episodes about it. We think this is cool, cool fodder for episodes. So thanks for those who reached out to us, and we will hit you up in the future.
Yep, for sure. Keep an eye on the Facebook post. We'll announce a winner here shortly. And that's all we got. All right, guys, that's all we got for tonight. This episode is brought to you by Right-On Optics. Right-On is bringing you high-quality glass at a great value. I use and trust their scopes, binoculars, and red dot sights, and you can too with their unconditional lifetime warranty. If you ever have a problem with their gear, they will replace it, not repair it. Finish up your next build and keep a little extra cash on hand for ammo so you can actually go out and shoot that thing. Find your next optic at rightonoptics.com.
This episode is also brought to you by ManaSex. We've talked a lot about the tactical fantasy on this podcast, and one of the quickest ways to break your tactical fantasies and actually improve your performance is by getting real feedback. One of the ways you can do that is with ManaSex. You're not going to get better at shooting on your own. You need practice, data, and coaching. And you need to make the most of your ammo with good live and dry fire training. Manus is a family of training devices that tracks you while you train. It times and tracks everything you do in a drill and coaches you as you go. It is indispensable to taking your shooting to the next level. Go find them on manasex.com.
Don't forget that we put out new episodes on the 1st and the 15th of every month. If you like what we're doing, you can head over to Patreon, give us $1 for each new episode. That money's going to go back into bringing you good content. If you want to interact with us, you could find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We are at TacTangents. You can also email info@tacticaltangents.com. And one last thing, our Facebook discussion group. We've got a little group going on Facebook. If you go to the groups tab on our page, you can join it. We've got more followers on our page than we have in the group. So I know there's some of you out there following the Facebook page that are on Facebook that are not in the group. Lots of like-minded people in there. So come hang out with us. All right. That's all we got. Good talk.